Welcome to day 4 of the World Chess Championship match between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana. I'm Anna Rudolph, and I've just made some friends with squirrels and parrots in the park. Our chess expert is Judith Pogar, of course, and she will analyze today's game for you guys.
Hi.
How are you, Judith, today?
I'm very fine. I'm very much excited about Game 4.
We are looking forward to it. I was trying to make a poll in the park. I thought that the locals could provide me with some insights, but they weren't willing to share with me whether they were Team Fabi or Team Magnus.
So did you have some fun with the squirrels and the animals in the park?
We had a beautiful weather. That was shot on the free day. The players had a free day on Sunday. And I believe, as we were discussing, Magnus Carlsen must have spent the free day practicing some sports, while Fabiano loves going for walks. So both players had to be very happy about the lovely weather on Sunday.
Absolutely.
The score is 1.5, 1.5, 3 draws, but all 3 draws were very hard fought. What was your impression on yesterday's game?
Well, maybe we can say that yesterday's game was the most solid one out of the first 3 games. And it was interesting for me to see Magnus's reaction, that he was absolutely not happy out of the opening. And I was actually very surprised that Magnus let it away Fabi on this end game, because in the opening it was Magnus who played kind of a surprising move, Queen c7, which was played very few occasions, and then he sacrificed the pawn, where he wanted to get some initiative. Fabi was, of course, more careful than to grab that pawn, and then some inaccuracies were happening by Fabiano. And then I think Magnus had a strong position, strong situation to try to squeeze Fabiano. And I think it's interesting to notice that actually I would believe that he would at least as many chances to get something out of the endgame than what he had in game 1, when he was pressing quite a bit the rook endgame. And this is the psychological part, I think, also in chess, that, of course, in the first game, Magnus knew that he was very close to winning. He felt it during the game as well. And it was so annoying that he really wanted to squeeze out every drop of a stone, and he still wanted to try to win or something. While in yesterday's game, he didn't really have a chance. It was roughly equal. Even he said that he felt not so well maybe at some point. But anyway, his position was not something that he could really play for a win or complicate matters or anything. And I think because he didn't really have a chance during the game, he was also playing it more easily, the end game, where actually he could give a little bit or more harder time for Fabiano in the end game, because it became a draw very quickly when he started to simplify, offering exchanges, the pawns, and knight c5 also when he was playing it. So it was very interesting for me that while we were analyzing it with Johan Hjartarson, also we discussed that, well, with Karpov it would have been like an extra 30 moves before he tries to exchange pieces. So it's interesting that yesterday's game it was kind of balanced, but I didn't feel that Magnus gave all the 100% until the very end of the game.
And Fabiano too was disappointed. Since he mentioned at the press conference this critical moment when he could have traded rooks on a5 and then play bishop d2, and he was regretting that he changed the move order, not realizing that allowing rook a2, a8 was actually getting him into a not so pleasant position. He could have had a slightly better position as white after the opening, but with the move he chose, bishop to d2 instead of the rook trade, it just slipped out of his hands, and then it was Magnus who was pressing. So the
I think it was quite unpleasant and annoying from white side to allow that kind of end game to happen later on in the game. But I think he felt it, that he doesn't really have anything special taken out of the opening. And then they both knew that the end of the game will be a draw, most likely. And that's why the inaccuracies happen in that game, I think.
What are we expecting for today? With reverse colors, this is the same as game 2. Are you expecting, first of all, the same opening?
Well, of course, the first question is whether first move, e4, d4, right?
Big question. Is it going to be e4 or d4?
I have the feeling that for this second white game of Carlsen, he will go for d4 again, This is what I'm thinking because, well, it was very uncomfortable, the game too, for Carlsen, especially that he was caught in some home preparation of Fabiano, of the challenger, which is already not a very nice thing. And actually he had to feel and play against practically Fabiano's home preparation, and you could see how unbalanced Magnus got already at move 10 when this rook d8 happened. And of course, when you know exactly that maybe it's not the best move and there are some very sharp lines, but you know exactly that you cannot figure out everything at the board, even if you're a world champion. So he had to go for some kind of more solid moves. He was kind of forced because it would have been too risky to go into any sharper continuation there. So I'm very curious whether they figured out something, of course, after rook d8 in move 11, knight d2, that was the critical idea. So it's a big question for me whether Fabiano would be repeating it, but I think maybe Fabiano would go somewhere else, actually, in this system still.
You believe that this was more of a one-game variation? He is not going to repeat rook d8. He might repeat the queen's gambit decline, but not this specific variation.
Yeah, I think for both players it seems very important, of course, who makes the first deviation from the other's preparation. This is already very important. And because actually really the best example was in game 2 how much Magnus suffered from this. And it showed very much on his time that he used so much time because of this. So I'm kind of expecting that probably Fabiano would want to make a surprise again to Magnus.
We shall see that. And of course, once again, we would love to have our live audience involved in the broadcast, so we will from time to time ask questions to you if you are willing to participate and help us solve the mystery of today's game. Our first question, and I'm going to ask that Paul right now, is if you also think that it's going to be 1 d4 or will Magnus Carlsen play 1 e4? Can we please have your hands up if you think that the first move will be 1 d4? Okay, thank you so much. What about 1 e4? I think you convinced our audience that it's going to be 1 d4, but some people, including myself, I'm rooting for 1 e4.
Well, e4 was actually played by Magnus, I think, in their last encounter in tournament.
In the last couple of encounters, so at the Sinkfield Cup it was 1 e4, the Petrov defense. Before that, at Norway Chess, it was the Bishop's opening. But yes, somehow I think we were all discussing this before the match, whether Magnus and Team Magnus was preparing all these months trying to refute the Petrov, or he would just simply switch to 1 d4, because it's not an easy opening to face and try to get an advantage.
No, I think it's very difficult, and actually Fabiano has very strong weapons, the Petrov and also the Berlin. I think he also plays time to time. But the Petrov, that's the main weapon, and actually it goes back to Kasimdzhanov, I think, because his second is a big expert on that also. So I'm still expecting d4.
Yes, I think you will be right for today, but let's hope that they may switch. In either case, I think whether it's e4 or d4, what we are sure about is that it's going to be an exciting game, because the players are not afraid of entering complex, double-edged positions. Both players with any color basically are willing to fight, and they are playing for a win. What we have witnessed is that Black had really good chances, especially in Game 1 and Game 2. It was Black who was playing for a win. So even the color doesn't matter as much as normally we would think.
Well, actually, I would even dare to say that in this match, Black is controlling kind of the match, right? Because in Game 1, it was absolutely clear that Magnus took over in the game, and he was the one who had the chance to collect the full point, while in Game 2, it was Fabiano who was pressing at the end, and he had the upper hand, and yesterday it was Magnus with Black. So for a moment, in every game, Black had some chances and gave more difficult tasks to White than the other way around.
Indeed.
So I am really curious what will happen in Game 4.
Before we go to the playing hall and show you how is Magnus and Fabiano, we have an interview from yesterday with some of our visitors.
I enjoyed it. I'm a bit overwhelmed because I've never been to anything like this before, not chess or anything, any World Championship. And I had no idea there would be so many activities on and so many places and ways to view it. So, but the actual match I enjoyed.
Very is nice. I think it's very interesting, and it's crowded. The most important thing for chess, I think a lot of people, especially I was surprised today's Monday, and still we have a lot of spectators, a lot of people who is coming for the souvenir shop and trying to get something. I think this is very good for chess, and the playing hall is fine.
It was sort of an Aladdin's cave, a Pandora's box. I kept finding more and more rooms and places and people.
And particularly the commentary. I think Judith Polgar and Anna Rudolph are just tremendous, and they really give you an insight into the plans that I could never have worked out for myself, so it's very interesting.
I think Caruana's going to know that he's going to struggle if it gets to a tie-break.
They will try to play safe and they will try to check each other. Of course, we will see that maybe game 6, 5, 6, 7, it will be maybe some score. Especially in the first game, we remember that Magnus, he had that chance, but who knows what will happen next. So we'll see. I think it will be quite interesting.
If you can get a bet down on either of them, 5-4 or better, take it.
Can't believe that we got some feedback as well on our work, Judith. I was really turning red as my blouse.
Yeah, we are very happy to be here, and actually we are very happy to see the live audience every day. It's already almost packed now as well, so it gives a special touch for us to, and for me to be alert and trying to give the best lines I can.
I'm curious how the players will be today in terms of what we can read from their body language. We mentioned earlier that Fabiano is very difficult to read. His facial expression, his posture, it's basically the same whether he's winning or losing. Magnus, on the other hand, gives out more, and he is the first player to arrive in the playing hall, so we are going to go to the playing venue right now and see how's the world champion doing. Filling out his score sheet. Mentioning the score sheet, of course, the arbiters are writing down everything that happens during the game, and yesterday there was a small incident according to social media when in reality nothing happened. Magnus Carlsen said Jadub before he touched his knight, but apparently the viewers who could only see the camera, they believed that Magnus touched the piece and then didn't move it. If you want to know more about this story, even the arbiter, our chief arbiter, tweeted about it, so you can follow Stefan Escarf. He tweeted, "Today, Magnus Carlsen talked to me in French during the game. He said, Jadot."
Yeah. It's interesting that he arrived first, as by the rule, actually, both players have to arrive 10 minutes prior to the start of the game, so they have the security check. And actually, I think usually Magnus is the one who comes later. He likes to postpone it to the last second as much as possible. But I think he's very much up to this fight today. That's what my feeling is, that he's really there. His mind is focused. His mindset is there. So it's interesting that the players, of course, when I was competing still, I always like to come 5-6 minutes at least in advance to the game, and just to get there, make your Jadub, all the pieces, the routine, just the playing hall, try to focus on the game, be ready.
What's different here as well is the media attention. So maybe Fabiano is avoiding it on purpose. Perhaps he would like to be sitting at the board focusing on the game, but I'm not sure how much he can focus if suddenly all the photographers appear, and he might not feel so comfortable at the moment. As we mentioned, it's his first World Championship match, and yes, they are used to being surrounded by photographers, but not this amount of photographers and this much attention.
Fabiano just arrived to the board, and we see on the screen there are like flashes all over. And yeah, it's interesting because, of course, now they have to be at the board already in time. But I remember exactly when we had this rule already for quite some years that in the first 5 minutes the photographers can make pictures. And I remember Kasparov did not really like this at all. And he came like definitely a few minutes later to the game. So, of course, all the photographers were practically fighting and kicking each other because they had maybe only a minute to make their pictures. And, of course, the flash was all over immediately. But here, of course, the photographers and all the media has the opportunity for 5 minutes to take their pictures. Well, I think generally speaking, of course, the players are happy when it's starting of the game minute 6, when everybody has to disappear from the box, and really they can be focusing only on the game without any disturbance, even though, of course, the players are so professional that they do have to exclude all the noise or anything which can be bothering them. Actually, it cannot. They just have to be closing their mind and concentrating on the game so much that it will not really disturb them.
Yes, even Fabiano, for whom this is still a novel experience, but yesterday at the press conference he said that, well, they have played already 3 games and it starts feeling like a normal chess tournament, even though it's for the highest stake.
Well, this is excellent for him if this is the way he feels, because actually in a tournament, usually the chess players stand up and go to see the other games as a relaxation to somehow relax their mind a little bit during these 6-7 hours of fight. And this is one of the difficult things, I think, for the players in a match, that you have to, and the only chance you can do is watch your own game, or you have some opportunity to walk around. But for chess players, usually it's a big help of getting loosen up a little bit during the game and give out the tension than just standing up, walking around, seeing other games, etc. And this is what in Berlin at the candidates tournament, for example, they had a very special setting that they had these little boxes.
The first move will be played by a young Norwegian lady. She is on the Olympic team of Norway. She was a player and a captain of the Norwegian team, so she knows very well Magnus Carlsen. She's also a chess author, has written a book for children that teaches chess in a fun way, and she was today's lucky player to make the first move, which is not E4 and nor D4.
Wow, we have C4.
So Alice Reppen has played C4 for Magnus Carlsen, and it stays on the board, and no one expected this, Judith. You know who expected it? The slip bomb. I don't know if we can bring back the camera to our studio, but in the souvenir shop of the World Chess Championship, there are all sorts of, I still don't know if it's perfume or lip balm. It's something.
It's a perfume.
And one of them is called King's Gambit, and the other is English Opening. Judith, what can this move tell us, 1c4?
Well, that definitely Magnus wanted to make sure that he's making the first surprise, right? And he made it already at the very beginning of the game. So English was starting out.
Now that the camera is back, I'm going to show it again, although it's very far, but it says English Opening. So this was the only sign. And the Sicilian Avenue, which is just around the corner.
Yeah, I'm also trying to figure out in the meantime that how Magnus is... okay, we are going to have some sharp system, G3, D5. Probably White will be taking on D5, no question about it. Or maybe he has done it already. Knight D5, Bishop G2 will be on the board. And, well, there were only a few games I see from Magnus previously. Against strong players, he was playing it. Knight D5, Bishop G2. And Knight B6 is the move which is the most common in this position.
Against each other, 1c4, according to my database, has only appeared once They played it in 2013 at the Tata Steel Chess Tournament in Wannsee. It was 1c4, g6. Fabiano responded with first move g6 in 2013. That's the only game where Magnus played c4 against Fabiano earlier.
Does he play lots against other people?
Yes, yes. That's what Judith is looking up. It's not that the English Opening is Magnus Carlsen's most principled opening. He normally doesn't push the c-pawn, as we all know. But for a World Chess Championship match, after a couple of months of preparation, of course, you want to play something that's not the most expected.
Well, bishop c5 was played, which is... we'll have to see how... Knight b6 is the most common move in this position. It's kind of an interesting continuation. Well, I don't know, probably castle is going to be the move in this position.
The players have made their first moves very quickly. Obviously, this is Magnus Carlsen's preparation. Fabiano definitely expected the English Opening too, in some extent.
Yes, so we have castle on the board, and black castled as well. Sometimes, of course, there should be also always check knight e5, kind of tactical opportunity for white, which if black would be taking the knight, then immediately knight d5, and white would have an extra pawn. So black would be taking knight c3, intermediate move, where white would be taking knight c6. And now if knight d1, knight d8, and I think black would be going knight f2. This would be the tactical idea of Fabiano, clearly. How it... and black is actually winning some material. So knight e5 is not something to be considered for white. I guess white would be playing d3. I don't know where we are at the moment. d3 was played already, and rook e8. Yeah, later on I think black will be bringing his bishop to e6. That's kind of the square to defend the d5 knight, but for a moment he's delaying that. So rook e8 is the first move before that.
How popular this has been? Have you seen other games recently in this variation?
I don't know. I will have to check a little bit on that. How is the time? They are flashing this out pretty fast, as
Very
far
quickly.
as I see.
And Fabiano too. We already said so many times that this match, yeah, they are playing now in November, but it started in March. This World Chess Championship match started in March. The moment Fabiano Caruana won the candidates tournament, both teams started working on what would be the most annoying variations for the opponent, because this is a psychological battle as well. They had to think what would be surprising, but at the same time comfortable for their players. So they do want to come up with variations that are not so expected. Imagine they have over half a year to prepare openings. So they want to come up with variations that are, of course, sound, but are not the main openings of their players. So in this case, Magnus Carlsen doesn't often play the English Opening, and we see the same with Fabiano. They're trying to go for variations that are not their most common.
Yes, and after rook e8, now Magnus is thinking. I need a few seconds until I get my database to see really what's up to in this line, because usually the bishop stands actually on e7. So this seems to me a kind of a surprising system. Well, probably later on the black bishop will be standing on b6 in a later stage of the game. Well, now white can consider to play different ideas. For example, bishop g5 is something to be thinking of when the queen is on d8. Whether black is willing to play f6 possibly, and then white would be coming back all the way to d2. But of course, there are always tactics black will have to think about having his knight on d5. But definitely white, I don't think he will be capturing this for the moment. Well, bishop d2 immediately is an option to play. a3 is something that in these systems, I believe, it's interesting to have. And of course, knight d2 is also an idea to be playing to open up immediately the diagonal of the bishop.
Magnus indeed has just played bishop to d2, knight takes c3, immediately responded by the challenger. Preparation of both teams on the board. At what point will one of them need to start thinking?
It is an interesting situation that actually Fabiano is playing it out so fast. I think after the first game, definitely it seems so, that he made sure that whatever he's going to be playing and having on the board, well, of course, it depends how well he is prepared for that opening. But it seems like he is very well prepared, and he makes sure that he plays as fast as possible, also to irritate the opponent, because this is one of the most annoying thing can happen to the world champion. Generally speaking, it is very annoying when you have the feeling that your opponent is well prepared, or even worse, better prepared than you are. But this knight c3 is kind of a surprising idea for me, because the most natural move, of course, is bishop takes c3. And now probably knight d4 would be the next move of black.
It has immediately been played by Fabiano.
Okay.
The players start with an hour and 40 minutes on the clock. You can see that Fabiano has an hour and 44, so he's just collecting time instead of using time. There's a half a minute increment with each and every move they play.
Well, this knight d4 is possible because of the previous 2 moves ago when rook e8 was played by black, right? And it's defended the e5 pawn, so this was the main idea of that now the e5 pawn is not, it's not possible to be taken. And actually it looks a pretty kind of healthy position for black. I would think that white possibly moving back to d2 with the knight, but then bishop g4 would be very energetic and straightforward. And it could be pretty unpleasant for white. Because after knight d2, if white would have a chance to play e3 later and develop and also come with the knight to e4, then he could be a kind of interesting position. Though after knight d2, also knight b5 is interesting, trying to get the bishop on c3, get one of the bishops of white to be exchanged. Knight d4 would be not something which would be nice to be played with white, because I would be taking e takes d4, and it would give the open file for the rook from e8 all the way to e2. It would gain a tempo also, so white would need to go back to d2. And again, well, probably queen e7 is, for example, an option to put immediate pressure on white's position later on, I think, or even to play c6 can be a good move to cut the power of the bishop from g2. So after that, black is able to move his bishop because the b7 pawn is not going to be under attack. Well, rook c1 is something I would consider with white, I think, to bring the rook in order to possibly to put some ideas on the c file. This is something to be considered. Well, we are still in the very beginning, so...
What I'm happy for is that after knight d4, we have reached the moment when one of the players, and in this case, the world champion Magnus Carlsen, started thinking.
Yes, and it seems like even though Magnus Carlsen wanted to give a surprise to Fabiano, his preparation, of course, he made his homework very well, it seems, and he reacted immediately in a way which not necessarily was expected by Magnus, because again we see that Fabiano actually left the board, and this is also a little small details that I know what I'm doing. I'm prepared very well. So I'm still, for long, I'm going to be in the book. And it's Magnus who is sitting there and spending his time.
Do you think it was the knight takes c3 variation that Team Magnus didn't really expect? Because up until that moment, Magnus had been playing very quickly.
I think the bishop c5 is not such a...
That's where it started, and then Magnus
common.
made some quick moves because, of course, he still knows the position. How many other games have been played here?
Actually, bishop c5 is played very little, very little.
Any strong players who played bishop c5?
Well, actually, Grischuk was playing this line is what I see here. And actually, it was in 2017 he played against Elyanov.
At the FIDE Grand Prix in Geneva.
And there, Black played, if we go back on the board, he played bishop b6 instead of rook e8 in move 8 after d3. And only later, in the move later, he played bishop rook e8, Grischuk. And so bishop c5 actually is kind of new breed in nowadays tournaments. So after castle, d3, rook e8 was played only 3 times as far as I see for the moment.
And that's how we started reaching a position that's almost new.
Rook e8. And yeah, it's only 3 games.
Who's the strongest player?
But actually, Fabiano was playing this.
Fabiano played this already.
He played this against Wesley So in Blitz in 2018. So
at the Grand Chess Tour in Paris this year in June, Fabiano played the exact same variation, but in a Blitz game.
And actually here it was the deviation at this point, because we just see that white played b4, where actually the game went with, now we are seeing the position on the board. After knight d4, we have b4 on the board, and Black played, Fabiano played bishop d6. But instead of b4, there was this game against Wesley So, what Caruana played, rook c1. White was playing, and then Black was moving away his bishop. So this is very interesting, because mostly when you make your preparation for a World Championship match, you not necessarily give a special attention to blitz games. And usually you think that when a challenger is playing all kind of different systems, they make sure they don't play the systems which they are planning to play in a World Championship match. And actually, maybe in that point when he was playing this blitz game, he didn't have an idea to play it, but he got so enthusiastic, or later point in the preparation, they decided that, well, if by chance Magnus plays the English, then even this is an option. So this is very interesting.
I think this is a fascinating opening battle once again between the two teams, and we are going to ask one of our guests to help us understand the situation and tell us who he's rooting for. He's Marc Hodovanec from the Galleons Primary School in East London. Welcome to the studio, Marc.
Hi.
Is it scary to be here?
No.
Just a little.
No.
We're not scary people. How old are you, Marc?
10.
10. And you are here because you learn chess in your school. Is it an after-school club? Do you have it as a subject?
It's before school.
Before school, so it's a breakfast club at your school. How do you like it here? Is it the first day that you came?
Yes.
What is it that you like about the place?
I like that it's like really big and simple. Compared to like other buildings, like competitions, like the competition is like really far away from where you'd usually be, while here everything's very simple and like it's not hard to get around the building.
All right. Did you see the players? Did you have a chance already to go to the auditorium and see
Yes.
them? How does it feel like? Is it the first time that you have seen Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana?
I've seen him like I've seen both of them on like videos and pictures, but never like where they were playing or where they would be playing.
So this is the first time that you see them in person. Who are you rooting for? You don't have a favorite?
Not really.
Do you have another player who's your favorite, or you simply haven't picked any chess player?
I don't really vote for chess players.
Oh, you don't? All right. So you're neutral? We have a neutral fan. Maybe you're the only one in this room who hasn't picked a favorite. And us, of course, because we shouldn't. Or what is it that you like about chess, or how did you start learning chess?
I started learning chess because when I would go on holiday, my granddad had like a chessboard, and he would just like ask me the chess pieces, how to move them, and then in year 3, I started the chess club in school.
That is great. And you still play every single day, or most of the days at school before the subjects start?
No, not like that often.
But I guess it's every week, perhaps.
Yeah.
Do you also compete? Do you go to chess tournaments?
Yeah.
What is it that you like the most about the game? Can you try to describe it?
I like how it's complex, and you can move. You have to think before you move, and you can get strategies that you might really, really like, and that's it.
All right. If you would need to make a prediction for today, we are going to ask you as a last question about today's game. Who do you think will win? Will it be Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces, or Fabiano Caruana with the black, or a draw?
I think someone will win.
Someone will win, but if Marc says so, then let's hope that he will be right, because we want a decisive result.
I think he'll most likely be Magnus Carlsen.
A decisive result, and most likely a win for Magnus.
I saw the game before I came here, and at the start of the game, Magnus looked like he was winning.
Okay, so he was so confident that you believe that showed that today he's ready and he's gonna outplay Fabiano.
Yeah, but then he's like really slow on time. Like Fabiano has 1 minute 44, 1 hour 44 minutes, while Magnus has 1 hour 28 minutes, and like 30 seconds for them would be like 2 seconds for me on like rapid chess.
That is true. But I'm very impressed that you could be observing Magnus and you managed to read from his body language that he's so confident that today could be the day.
He's not really confident. He's thinking a lot.
Oh, I mean before the game you thought that he was so confident that today he's gonna win, and now
I didn't think he was confident. I just thought by the moves that he would probably win.
Okay. It's still a very brave prediction. I think most of our guests have predicted draws.
Because Fabiano, he slightly has a worse position, and Magnus has the more space.
Okay.
Well, like Fabiano, he might have the center 4 squares. Then Magnus kind of just has a better position.
Do you agree with Marc's assessment, Judith?
I don't know. I think this English opening is a very complex opening, where it's true what you're saying, that, for example, knight is on d4, so he took the central square by the e5 pawn. In other hand, the fianchetto bishop is very strong for white, which is standing on g2. So later on, when the knight is moving away to d2, for example, then this bishop can be very powerful. But I think this is going to be a very sharp game today. It can be very, very interesting with lots of ideas, and also maybe later on lots of tactics as well.
So you think that Marc could be right, that today we will see a decisive result?
Absolutely.
Well done, Mark. If Judith Polgar agrees with you, that means you have done an amazing job. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that you will enjoy your day here at the venue. And may Magnus win as you predicted it. Thank you.
Thank you.
A big applause for Mark. Very brave gentleman. Thank you very much. I think Mark is very brave because he's the first guest to actually predict a decisive result.
Well, that's how kids are, right? They are brave in saying what they think.
Yes, and I was just going to add that, of course, Mark is one of the many children who visit us every single day. They come from different